2024 has been a wild year for cozy games on the Nintendo Switch, because this year truly had a little bit of everything. We had cozy games that let us down and weren't worth the hype. We had some games come out of absolutely nowhere and blow us away. And we've had some cozy games that are so good, they've made my top cozy games of all time list. So today I've gone through every single cozy game that came out in 2024 and narrowed it down to my top 10. And we're even going to do these in order of how much I love them. Now, we couldn't start off a list like this without doing some honorable mentions. First up, we have Sticky Business. The joy in this game is simply just making stickers, as this will see you do absolutely every stage of owning a sticker business. First up, you have designing the stickers, and you don't have to worry if you're not particularly artistic, because they give you a ton of different templates and stuff to use, so you're guaranteed to make something cute and fun. The next stage is to arrange them on the page so that when you print a line of stickers, you can get the most amount of stickers out. And then it's up to you to take in each of the orders and package them and ship them so they get to your customers on time. And you can enjoy all of this entirely at your own pace. There's no deadlines, there's no pressure to get things done. And although customers will suggest what kind of thing they're looking for, it's not something you can really fail, so you can just have fun with the design process. This honestly very narrowly missed out on the top 10, but I had to mention it anyways. Another game that narrowly missed out is Magical Delicacy. Now, this combines two genres I never thought I'd see together, and that is being a platformer, but also a cooking shop game. This sees you play as Flora, who moves to a brand new city in order to fulfill her dream of becoming a proper witch. And to do that, she decides to open up her very own shop in the heart of town. And when you're not cooking in the kitchen, you're either off collecting the ingredients or delivering your concoctions to the residents of the town. And this is where the platforming elements come in. Now, one thing I appreciate is the fact that they knew that not everyone who plays this game will be particularly good platformers, so you can go into the settings and make the platforming a little bit easier. But essentially, to get anywhere in the town, you'll have to do different elements of platforming. Some of it easy and some of it a little bit more challenging. This was such a refreshing take on a cozy game with two genres I never thought would be together, and this was honestly a lot of fun to play. It just didn't quite make it to my personal top 10. That's it for the honorable mentions, so let's get on to the list. In 10th place, we have Stitch. I think it's easy when there's so many life sims and farming sims out there to forget about one of my favorite genres of cozy gaming, and that is puzzle games. And for years, Joff Romantic has been my go-to when I want to sit in front of the TV, put on a comfort film or TV show, and play a little bit of a puzzle game. But that all changed when Stitch released on the Nintendo Switch, as this is a kind of cross-stitch version of Sudoku. Now, the premise in this starts off at least pretty simple. You'll be given a color and how many squares to fill in, and it's up to you to click and drag to fill in those squares. The only thing is, the game doesn't tell you how exactly they need to be filled. And although at first it seems pretty obvious what order and what way they can go in, you'll soon find out that you might need to do some readjusting in order to get everything to fit the way it should. Now, the great thing about Stitch is it caters for all ability levels. You can do the very quick levels that won't take you too long and are relatively straightforward and simple. You can take on some really hard and brain-twisting levels that will really get you to think hard about the placement of each and every one of your stitches. Or you can go for marathon levels. This is when you just want to sit there and be able to play the same level for hours and not have to think about anything else. This is one of those cozy games that you can pick up and either play for 5 minutes if that's all you have spare, or you can play it for 2 to 3 hours and watch the time just disappear. And as someone who doesn't do cross-stitching in real life because I'm just not that tactile, this was something I really enjoyed playing and really took me by surprise. Then in 9th place, we have Bandletale. Now, although I love cozy games, I feel like the cozy game genre is lacking in one major aspect, and that is storytelling. Because up until Bandletale came out, if I wanted an RPG-like story, I'd have to go and play an RPG. And there wasn't really much out there that I could play that had a fantastic story, but also didn't have any combat. So when Bandle Tale was announced as a crafting RPG, I was incredibly intrigued. And thankfully this had everything that I was looking for and so much more. The story sees you play as a Yordle, a shy little creature that is obsessed with all things knitting. And after your 101-year-long apprenticeship ends, you decide to attend a party to let loose a little. The only issue is this party goes horribly wrong, and the portals that connect all of the different islands that make up Bandle City collapses. And as a result, everything is thrown into chaos. And to top off this entire situation, you also find that your best friend who came to the party with you is now missing. So you decide to set off on an adventure to use your unique knitting abilities to try and not only save your friends, but also restore the portals and reunite Bandle City once again. Now, the strength of Bandle Tale is most definitely in its story and your interactions with each of the characters, as the writing in this is absolutely incredible. And by far my favorite part of all of this is the fact that you can literally solve all of your problems by throwing parties. This mechanic is a lot of fun, very different and not something I expected, but something I very much enjoyed. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Bandle Tale is an RPG with no combat, but you most definitely still have the XP grind. But instead of it being by going out and defeating different enemies, you level up by crafting. So this involves a lot of resource gathering, a lot of skill trees, which you most definitely might need a wiki for, and a lot of time being spent at your home making different bits and bobs. Now, I sometimes really enjoy some parts of repetitive gameplay like XP grinding, but Bandle Tale truly makes it worth your while, because each time you make it to a part of a game where you do need to level up, it rewards you with a nice chunk of story, so you get to see what good you've done for the town and how you're moving just a little bit closer to bringing Bandle City back together again. And if any of this looks a little bit familiar, then you might want to know that this was made by the maker of Graveyard Keeper, hence the large focus on skill trees. I truly hope that my love of Bandle Tale and other people's shows that there's such a market for story-driven cozy games, and I love the fact that this has so many elements of being an RPG, just without the fighting. Then in 8th place, we have Botany Manor. Now, I'm a little bit biased about this one because the story is all about a woman in STEM, and as someone with a PhD in chemistry, this story was something that mattered a lot to me. This is a first-person puzzle game set in the 1890s where you play as a botanist named Arabella. And this follows her journey as she tries to finish her research book called Forgotten Flora. But the thing that makes Botany Manor so unique and worthy of being a top 10 game in my opinion is how the different puzzles are done. You see, each puzzle revolves around a different seed where you need to go and find each of the conditions it needs in order to flourish. You see, scattered around the area will be various clues all about the habitat this seed normally grows in. And this will contain all types of information, from what type of soil it prefers, what temperatures, and sometimes figuring out that some flowers need a little bit of fire to bloom. And as you progress through each of the different levels that are separated by areas of the house, the puzzles get a little bit more intricate and a little bit more difficult. And sometimes you'll find the clues in areas you least expect. But when you're out there looking for clues, it's not just information about the seeds that you'll find. You'll also find little tidbits about the life and career of Arabella and the challenges she faced as a woman navigating her scientific career. And this mix between story elements and puzzle elements is what really made this game special. The puzzles themselves were a lot of fun to figure out, and I was surprised by how much variation there were between each of them. I think the only thing that let this game down was that there were some moments where you could get incredibly stuck and there was no hint system whatsoever. The house itself was also beautiful to explore, even on the Nintendo Switch. And I found myself thoroughly enjoying each of the puzzles that I tackled. And although this game felt a little bit short, it also felt so refreshing and so different, and I had so much fun playing it. Next, in 7th place, is The Plucky Squire. Again, this is a game unlike any on this list. The reason I had to put the Plucky Squire on my top 10 though was the fact that this was just a pure joy to play, even though there were some frame drops here and there on the Nintendo Switch. This is a game that was packed with humor, different puzzles for you to take on and encounter, and although it wasn't all that difficult, it was just so much fun to play. The story follows Jot and his friends, who are a series of storybook characters who discover that there's a whole 3D world that awaits them outside the pages of their book. But sadly, they're not the only ones who have made this discovery. And once the villain of the book named Hump Grump discovers the 3D world, he flicks to the end of the book only to find out that this is a story he is destined to lose. And so Hump Grump takes the fate of the story into his own hands and changes it forever. And it's up to Jot and his friends to try and restore the happy ending to the book and defeat Hump Grump. And although the beginning of the game is a lot of fun, seeing you run around each of the different pages, being able to rearrange the words on the page to change the landscape, it's really when you get introduced to hopping between the 2D and 3D world that this game really comes into its own. As not only does this introduce the fact that you can hop between pages on the book and even take different items, it also helps with the 3D platforming sections as well, letting you do anything from moving different items around to even crossing unpassable sections, so long as you could hop into a sheet of paper. This is also such a wonderful combination of so many different gameplay styles, with there being both 2D and 3D platforming, fun puzzles that you encounter in various different ways, mini games, and even boss battles. And altogether, this is just such a fun experience, and it's great for a lot of different ages as well. It was such a unique cozy game to come out this year, and one I thoroughly recommend. Then in the 6th place, we have Snufkin Melodies of Moomin Valley. Now this is an absolutely fantastic game, whether you're a long-time fan of Snufkin and Moomin, or if you're someone completely new to the franchise like I was. This is a musical adventure that sees you play as Snufkin, who sets off on a journey to try and reconnect with Moomin. But along his journey, he discovers these hideous parks that have cropped up all along the valley, not only disrupting the landscapes, but also the critters who call it home. And soon, this simple journey just to find a friend turns into you distracting police officers, pulling out signs, and befriending all of the creatures you find along the way, with each of the puzzles you encounter having a wonderful musical element to them. The first thing that really caught my eye about this is the art style. This really brings the entire world to life and made this game a pleasure to play from start to finish. And I love that this game's whole focus is just on exploration, music, and its wonderful story. And to me, this just has the perfect balance between narrative elements, puzzles, and side quests that just mean that you never get bored. Next, in 5th place, we have Lodonauts. Now, although this released earlier last year on PC, it didn't come to the Nintendo Switch till 2024, but I am so glad it made its way over. And the Nintendo Switch version, by the way, includes all of the DLC. Lodonauts is all about cleaning up the ocean on an alien planet, and will see you tasked with going and cleaning up all of the pollution. Be this different trash that you need to find and clear up with your bubble gun, or icky gloop that grows on all of the plants that you need to wash away. And as you go, you'll be able to recycle all the trash that you collect into useful items, allowing you to upgrade all of your gear and make it even further. And although you do need to be a bit mindful of your oxygen as there is a gauge, it's something I didn't really notice. You see, after you clean a few of the plants, they'll start giving off bubbles, so it's never really something that is worrisome, just something to keep an eye on and know that you need to float on over to one of the plants to regain the rest of your oxygen. But by far the best part of Lodonauts is the Loddles. These are really cute axolotl-like creatures that you'll find as you explore and clean up the place. And essentially what you do is you find them and you rescue them from a really polluted area, and after you've cleaned things up a bit and fed them, you'll be able to release them into a newly cleaned habitat. Much like the likes of Power Wash Sim, this game is all about being satisfying. And I love the fact that the guns you use to clean up have a really good auto aim feature, so you never feel like you're fighting the controls, even on the Nintendo Switch. For this price point, it's a game I cannot recommend enough. I am in love with it, and it's just fantastic on the Nintendo Switch. Next up is a slightly out-of-pocket entry, and that is at number 4, Balatro. If we went off the number of hours I've spent playing cozy games this year, this would be number 1. And that's not because I haven't spent a lot of time in all these other cozy games, it's because I have an ungodly amount of hours in Balatro. And if you need any more of a reason to check this out, this was nominated for Game of the Year. So this is your sign to play Balatro. This is a deck building roguelike, and it's kind of based on poker hands. But don't worry, not only is this not about gambling, you also don't need to know anything about poker to get into Balatro, as part of the magic is teaching you how to play, because even if you think you know how this is going to go, you don't. Now, the idea at first is pretty simple. You play poker hands to score points, and if you get enough points, you win the round. And each round gets progressively harder, and the points you need to score goes up. And at first, it is more or less very similar to poker. The better the hand, the more points you score, so a 3 of a kind is worth more than a pair. But when the real fun starts is when you finish a round, as this will allow you to take the money that you've earned from winning to spend on turning your very normal 52 card deck into something special, as this will introduce the use of something called a Joker card, and each of these has their very own special effect on your deck. Some will be more common and have smaller effects, and some will be much rarer and have very vast effects on your deck. So some jokers, for example, might give you more points for playing straights, therefore you want to play a straight more. Others will give you multipliers when you play a card of a certain suit. And when you combine this with the ability to pick and choose more playing cards to add to your deck, this can make things incredibly interesting. Now, I don't want to spoil all the magic, because a large part of the fun of Balatro is seeing a card and going, I wonder if I can do this with it, and then discovering that yes, you can. And you see, each time you play Balatro, you get a little bit better and you learn the game a little bit more, and you'll want to try out something a little bit different. And as you play the game more, you'll unlock more cards that you can use in each of the rounds, making things more interesting and again, making you want to play more. And there's something so satisfying about the little dinging noise the game makes when you start to get longer and longer point streaks. Just everyone who's played the game knows exactly what I'm talking about. And considering its price, it's one of those games which I have to say, please give it a go. This may not look like your style of game, but I haven't found anyone who hasn't been hooked to it since they've started. It's finally time for my top 3 cozy games of 2024. And this is an incredibly strong top 3. So strong, in fact, that I'm fairly sure all 3 of these might make it to my top 10 cozy games of all time list. I love them just that much. And although it was incredibly difficult to try and figure out which way to order these, in 3rd place, I have gone for Tavern Talk. This is a visual novel based in a D&D inspired world. And this will see you run your very own tavern called Wayfarer's Inn, a popular place for all of the fantasy people of Asteria to come and take a break. And although it is your job to talk to customers and make them drinks, this by no means is a normal cafe simulator game. You see, your drinks are something a little bit different, as they can change a customer's destiny forever. Now, don't get me wrong, making different drinks for each of the customers was a lot of fun, and figuring out exactly what they liked is part of the charm. But there's more to being a tavern keeper than just making drinks. You see, as customers come in, they'll often talk about problems going on in their own lives or among the realm that they need someone to come and sort out. And you take these pieces of information that you hear and turn these into quests that other customers will come in and take. But the part I love the most about Tavern Talk is the storytelling, as even though you spend the entire game behind the bar, you get to learn everything about this fantasy land, including its people, politics, and even its history from just where you're stood. And over time, not only will you get to know each of the customers better, but you'll also get to see the regulars form relationships between each other. And the more you get to know them and the more you like them, the more nerve-wracking it gets when they decide to pick up one of your quests and ask for one of your drinks before they go. A drink that will define how this quest goes and what their outcome is. I fell in love with so many of the characters and got so invested in their personal stories, which just goes to show just how good the writing is. This was by far one of my favorite games of the year. I was obsessed with the story and I loved it so much. Then in second place, we have Moonstone Island. Now, I have a special place in my heart for creature collecting games. I have loved Pokemon for the longest time, although less so Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and games like Ooblets absolutely stole my heart. So when I heard that a game called Moonstone Island was coming out that combined not only creature collecting, Zelda-like dungeons with life sim elements, I was incredibly intrigued. And thankfully, this is a game that not only lived up to its hype, but so much more. This starts you off with you moving to a brand new island in the sky to complete your alchemy training. And it's your job to not only help the townspeople with your team of spirits and magical potions, but to also try and become a member of the community by moving in, helping out, making friends, and maybe even falling in love. But the thing that really surprised me with Moonstone Island is how there was just so much to discover, with over 100 procedurally generated islands for you to fly to and explore. Each of them have their very own dungeons and new spirits for you to not only find, battle, but maybe even add to your team. Now, the battle mechanic was pretty unique and I really enjoyed it. It's turn-based, where each spirit has a set of cards that it can use, and as you level up, you get to add new cards to each of your decks. And the dungeons themselves were by far some of my favorite parts. Some of them have different puzzles that you need to encounter and figure out. Others have boss fights that will require you to train up and get the right spirits in order for you to tackle. But alongside exploring the world, there's also so many wonderful life sim elements that keep you coming back to the town and its people. As not only do you have friendship mechanics, each of the villagers will also have quests for you to complete from time to time, keeping you busy and exploring each of the lands. But you'll also be able to set up your very own house and decorate it so you can call it a home. My favorite part by far is the fact that you can craft things like a home for your spirits to live in, where you can even visit the spirits and feed them each and every day to get vital resources. And if you're someone who loves shiny hunting like I do, they have an equivalent in this game, meaning that even when you've done the entire story, there's plenty to keep you busy. Despite the fact that this is a combination of so many different genres, Moonstone Island does each of them so well. And the best way to describe this is being a pure joy to play from start to finish. And although there's no immediate goals for you to go out and do or no linear story, it's something that I couldn't stop playing regardless. That means, in first place, coming as a surprise to absolutely no one, is The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Now, this is definitely the most expensive game on this list, by far. But to me, this lived up to its price tag and so much more. As let's be honest, how was I ever not gonna love a game that sees you play as Zelda, who needs to set off and not only save Hyrule, but also Link? And the best way for me to describe this is a near perfect combination of the old school Zelda mechanics from Toon Link, which I absolutely loved, with some added inspiration from the likes of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. As despite the fact that you play as Zelda, this very much returns to the old school format, where you have a number of different dungeons that you can take on in any order, each of which giving you a little something that will help you on your journey as you carry on around Hyrule. But despite the dungeon formats being pretty familiar, the way you solved them and got around them is much more similar to the likes of Tears of the Kingdom, as this game introduced the concept of echoes. These are objects which you could go around and copy and then call upon them yourself to use them to get out of puzzle-like situations. And despite the fact that Nintendo gave us a vast array of echoes to call upon, I very quickly discovered that 99% of my problems could be solved with a bed. Either that or fire, Now, I really enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom, but I sometimes felt very overwhelmed with all of the things that were at my disposal. And I feel like Echoes of Wisdom gave me a lot of that stuff, but in a more controlled format, so I didn't feel quite as lost all of the time. And once you combine these puzzle-like elements and the fact that this is essentially an open world map where you can go wherever you want to go and take on the dungeons in whatever order you see fit, with the fact that this had a really fun story, this just made a game that I finished in less than 2 weeks because I simply couldn't put it down. And although some parts were definitely made a little bit more frustrating by the fact that Zelda just didn't have a sword all of the time, overall I had an absolute blast playing this, and I loved seeing Zelda finally being the one to go out and not only save the whole of Hyrule, but also save Link as well. That's it for my top 10 cozy games on the Nintendo Switch in 2024. Let me know your top 3 in the comments down below, and if you want to see my top 10 most played Nintendo Switch games, click this video here.